Good morning, Clearbranch kids. It's a brand new month, the month of April, and we have a whole new theme and a whole new virtue that we're going to study this month. This month, we're going to be learning all about humility. Now, we know that it's usually said that it's good to be humble, but do we know really and truly what humility means? Well, what humility means is putting others first by giving up something that we may think that we really deserve. And I can't think of a better example than Jesus. And that's exactly where we are in our story today. We've been learning all about his ministry and his life. And now our story from today comes from the time just there at the end of his life here on earth. Now, Jesus and his friends were getting ready to travel into the city of Jerusalem. And the Feast of Passover was about to happen. And so the city was already just loaded with people there to celebrate. And Jesus and his friends would be no different. Now remember, they walked everywhere they went. There was no big deal for them to walk miles and miles every day. But this particular day, even though they weren't going very far, Jesus asked a couple of his helpers to go into the city and bring him back a donkey and its child so that he could ride into the city. Now, that may have seemed strange, but remember, the prophet Zechariah had prophesied back in the Old Testament that when Jesus came into the city, he would come on a donkey. And so Jesus knew that that's what he needed to do to prove a couple of things. First of all, to prove that the prophecy was true and that he really was truly Messiah, the Son of God. And also to show that even though most rulers, most kings would ride in on a grand horse or something, they would have this great grand entrance, Jesus was choosing a simpler, more humble route. Now, that day, as they traveled into the city, the crowds saw him coming and they surrounded him and they laid down coats and blankets and things over the road so that his path would be smoother. And then they also waved palm branches in celebration of his entrance into the city of Jerusalem. And as they did that, they yelled things like, "Hosanna, in the highest, praise be to God." They praised him because they were recognizing that they knew who Jesus was as he came into the city. Now, later that week, as Jesus and his friends gathered to celebrate the Feast of Passover, Jesus did something even more strange. We've talked before about how when an honored guest would come to someone's home, often the host would prepare to have a servant or someone to wash this honored guest's feet. Because like we said, people walked everywhere. They wore sandals and their feet were filthy by the end of the day. And so having someone to wash a guest's feet showed them honor. And of course, it also was something that was usually done by someone that was considered more lowly in the household. But this night, after they had gotten settled, Jesus took off his outer robe and he wrapped a towel around his waist. And he took a basin and he began to wash the feet of each of his disciples. Now, some of them were very uncomfortable by this. They did not like the fact that Jesus was doing this for them when they felt like they should have been the person in the role of a servant. But Jesus was trying to teach them something very, very important. And that is this, that we were not here to be lifted high, but we are here to serve others in the way that Jesus was serving those disciples that night. That was an important lesson just for that evening, but it's also a really important lesson for us in what it means to be humble. So just as Jesus put others first, we should too.